Hello, this is Kaylee with the Warrior Painters podcast. In this episode, I had a great conversation with David Merritt, who is an awesome painter mastering both digital and plein-air painting. You'll find out how much he appreciates taking art classes, and as an art teacher himself, he's shared a lot of great tips.
My name is Dave Merritt. I'm a BG painter in animation, and I also teach digital painting for CGMA.
Really interested in how you got into painting to begin with, and how did you start? Did you start with traditional? Did you start with digital?
Yeah, I started with traditional. I went to Cal State Long Beach originally, and so we were doing all traditional work. I actually did a lot of watercolor, and I actually learned oil painting when I was there as well, so that totally got me into traditional. And I think figure painting was what really got me excited about painting in oil. So I had a teacher, Yuji, who was like really good, but like really hardcore. And that's when the oil painting became really cool for me.
Oh, what was your major?
I was illustration, but it wasn't entertainment. It was sort of like general. I didn't really know what I wanted to do specifically. I just liked art. Part of the curriculum was taking painting classes. So I took classes with Yuji and another teacher during the summer, and that really turned me on the painting. And then I went to Art Center after that. Actually, before I went to Art Center, I actually took my first landscape classes with Eric Merrill. And that's what really got me into plein air. So I was combining outdoors and painting. That's like two great fun things to do.
Now, why did you go to Art Center like after Cal State Long Beach?
Because I didn't feel my portfolio was that good. Like and it definitely wasn't streamlined towards doing entertainment work. I felt like I had a lot more to learn, and also my skills I felt needed to be a lot better in order to get work. My plan wasn't to graduate from Art Center. I would have been happy to get a job and leave before then, but I did not have that happen. So I ended up getting 2 degrees in illustration.
Unfortunately, you graduated.
Yeah.
That's funny. But did you want to become a gallery artist?
You know, it always seemed like a really, really hard thing to do. Like for as much as like entertainment is difficult, it seems like gallery is like 10 times more difficult. You have to be pretty strong to be able to basically make no money for a long time before you make, a living out of it. And so I don't even know if I could do that now, if I'd have that that much of it to like tough it out. But that seems like what you have to do to do it. But I still like to paint in my spare time, and I've sold a painting here and there. It's nothing to live off of, but it's still nice that someone likes your painting so much they're willing to pay money for it. I have some people, like a classmate with Zoe Milk, and she's doing really well. And so it's like, okay, if you just really work at it, you can become a gallery artist, but you still have to be very, very dedicated and focused. And so that's a tough thing, especially to be self-motivated. That's another reason why I went to art centers, because I could take classes, but I wasn't as self-disciplined. And so I went there because I needed that discipline to like make me do the work and not sleep. So I work hard and get better. But I mean, I did get better and I got a job. So success in that part.
How did you learn about the entertainment art industry?
I think I always liked animation, and I really appreciate the artistry of it. And I think I knew someone that went to Art Center, and I knew about like their program and their training. And there are some pretty good artists in the industry that went to Art Center. They're good. And then my first landscape paint teacher, Eric Merrill, he went to Art Center, and he's super good. So I'm like, man, he's super good. He's just like a graduate, just a regular bachelor's. Then seems like they got a good program that they turn out people with some like pretty high skill. Because I've seen people from like they get a master's and their skill level isn't as high as some people that graduate from art centers with a bachelor's. So that's why I chose to do that instead of getting a master's, because I just was looking for the skill alone.
So does that mean you took 8 years in school? Like you went to school for 8 years?
Not 8 years, but probably close. It was a lot of schooling. It definitely was not, I wouldn't recommend 8 years of school. Like you definitely can get the skills in less time, but yeah, it was a lot of years of school.
It's like you need to put in the time, right? It's not about school. Maybe it's just about time, how much time you spend practicing and stuff.
Yeah, and I was kind of bitter a little bit that I felt like I didn't get, I went to Long Beach, like, oh, I didn't get like a good enough education. But I was like, no, I got an education and I got better. Like it did take time to build up that skill. So I'm glad I went somewhere else and then went to Art Center, because I mean, if I was in high school, I went straight to Art Center, it would probably be a little bit of waste of time and a lot of waste of money, because like you will grow, but you're only going to grow so much. So if you have your skill built up a little bit more and then you go there, then you're going to be like even better.
That's true. It's like your Long Beach experience was teaching you how to learn as a student.
Yeah.
So when you go to Art Center, you could actually learn and use your potential to do better, I guess. And you save time and save money in a way.
Yeah, actually, I mean, for the amount of scholarship I got, it actually saved me money in the long run. I had enough skill to get some scholarship at Art Center, so that did help financially.
Yeah, that's important to know. And what was your concentration at Art Center?
It was entertainment arts. There's entertainment design, entertainment arts, and I always liked animation, like feature animation, and entertainment design. Kind of like felt like it was a little more like sci-fi and hardcore industrial design focused. But I took a lot of entertainment design classes, so I felt like both majors had a lot of positives to get from it, and they had their negatives too.
Yeah, but for either of them, people go to games and films and animation, right? It's like almost
Yeah.
the same industries they go to afterwards.
Yeah, it is funny because they're kind of like rivals in school, and then you might end up working. And I have worked at the same company with people that were like of that major, and it's like, well,
Did you always work in animation? Did you work in other industry before?
I did a tiny bit just because I was kind of a little bit lost. I was like a movie extra for like a couple months, and I worked for a industrial design construction engineering firm for like about 2 years right before I went to Art Center. And so that was, I mean, it was interesting. There was a lot of science involved, a lot of math, but it was kind of, you know, not creative like work artistically. Yeah, it's not the same as doing paintings for animation. Not quite as fun.
Did you continue to paint during those 2 years when you were working?
Yeah, actually, I had a real tough time accepting that I wasn't doing art for a job. Like, I had a real tough time. I was like, oh, like this whole thing, I thought my life would go one way and it seems like it's going another way. So I thought of myself as like, I'm just an artist who's happened to be working like a non-art job. And that's actually when I started taking like Eric Merrill's class and like made another class or two, because I was like, I still want to keep on painting. So I still kind of working the normal job kind of made me take other classes just to like keep on going and doing something instead of like not. I couldn't imagine not doing any art at all.
And did you hear about the word plein-air painting from Eric Merrill's class, or did you know about that before?
Yeah, I think I might have learned about that time. There is also a painting group in Palos Verdes called the Portuguese Bend Artist Colony. Dan Pinkham was like kind of like the leader of that, and he actually was an Art Center grad from like the 70s. And so they did plein air paintings. They actually used to have shows every year, and it was pretty awesome. Museum quality shows just like up in Palos Verdes in a little room. And so it was like amazing to see all these like plein air paintings, but on top of that, from an area that I lived around. And so you can see like any place can be really cool if like you have a good painter that paints it. Just for the term plein air, I probably learned it from them and Eric.
And you mentioned you took some traditional painting classes at Long Beach, right? And the figure painting was what got you into painting.
Yeah. I mean, the first oil class I took was like pretty boring. It's like cones and like boxes, all painted white. It just wasn't interesting. When I took the figure painting, the figure is like way more complex, but also way more interesting. And so my teacher is hardcore. I mean, he was as difficult as like a difficult Art Center class. So like we worked really, really hard, but we got a lot better.
Did you do any traditional paintings before college then?
Not really. I don't think, I mean, maybe I've like had touched watercolor, but I like drawing. I like comic books. And it wasn't until I went to college that it forced me like, hey, you got to do painting. You got to do a finished image, not just a drawing. I kind of got a better appreciation of that. And also I had art history classes. I had to take a class just on like Renaissance for a full semester. And so that was pretty good to go really delve deep into artists. I'd go to the museums, and so then you really get into painting. And when you do oil painting, and then you go see the oil paintings in the museums, you're like, whoa! Like then you're really impressed because you know how hard it is. It's interesting to learn about like the past and how they did things, and still influences us now.
Did you take any other traditional painting class at Art Center then?
Yeah, I was actually really excited taking like painting classes. I took a figure painting class. I actually took landscape painting like 3 times at Art Center. It's only required like once. And one of those classes was with Angela. That's how I met her. I've taken a lot of plein air painting classes. That's the most art classes I've taken. And I still could probably take more.
So the 3 plein air painting classes were from the same teacher?
One was with Rob Rupel, and the other 2 were with Mike Humphreys.
So you learned all these skills from different people then?
Yeah, and it's kind of like building up. You already learned some stuff, and so it's like you go back in there and kind of like working it out. With Rob's, it was digital, so it was like a very different process. It was way harder than I thought it would be. Actually, I think towards the end of class, I started painting like traditional again because I was like, it's too frustrating. I just want to just paint with regular paints.
How did you? I know you met Angela over there, but did you guys keep in contact afterwards? Did you learn about warrior painters from her?
Yeah, I think we didn't like hang out, but we'd bump into each other or something, and like we had a lot of mutual friends. I think there was like plein air painting group that happened here and there, and then I felt like with the warrior painters Angela started hosting, then that kind of became more cohesive because then I started going like a lot, like every single session I would go, and so like that was good.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I don't go as often because I'm busier with work. But...
And you would always paint in oil at that time, right?
No, actually, by that time, I totally switched off of oil.
Acrylics.
I used acrylic. I used acrylic and gouache. But I used acrylics on and off, and then used gouache more out of laziness. Like I think oil's great, but it's like a lot of cleanup and it takes more time.
Yeah, right. But you paint gouache like you paint oil. It's kind of thick.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. They're like, "Oh, is this oil?" I'm like, "No, it's gouache." I'm like, "It looks like oil." I'm like, "Well, I just paint. I pretend like it's oil. I paint like it's oil because I'm actually like oil the most, but I'm too lazy to deal with oil. So I know if you paint super thick with gouache, it'll crack. And I haven't had that happen too often, but that's the one danger with gouache is that it can't be caked on as much as oil.
And you always painted trees, I remember.
Yeah, I love trees. I never cared about trees at all until I started painting, and I'm like, oh, they're so cool.
It's like wherever we went, you would find like sometimes the only tree like, in that area.
Yeah, let's go paint. Let's go visit super cool architecture, and then I find like the one tree that was in there to paint.
I think you joined Warrior Painters a long time ago. Do you remember when?
It was a while ago. I know it was like kind of early on. Yeah, I mean it's crazy to see how much it's grown. I mean, it started out as like a couple people, and yeah.
And I think you participated in all the gallery shows we have hosted, that we have organized, right?
I think the first show I didn't, but then I think after that, then yeah, like I was in like a lot of the shows.
Yeah, I remember all your trees. Yeah. I'm just joking. I remember all the flowers too.
I think they're probably mostly trees and flowers. That's pretty much like what I paint.
Yeah. And what do you think you like most about the group?
I mean, it's a factor of things. It's great to have a group of people meet up and everyone's interested in the same thing. And it's like a pretty nice environment. There's not like pressure to like do a good job or get out, it's like everyone's welcome. So like that's really cool. And then also like to have like a regular meetup. Like I'm kind of lazy, so it's nice. Like, all right, let's meet here. I'm like, okay, at this time, like, all right. And then if you go regularly, then you start to get to know people too. So then you have some like friendships that develop from that as well. I think all those things like really make it like a fun group.
Did you have a painting routine before you joined the group?
No, it's like just kind of haphazard. It's only if I take a class that I would be more strict. So yeah, it's I sort of need some outside motivation to keep me regular.
But do you have an art, just art routine in general? Do you like do art every day?
Well, I definitely do for work, and I feel like I'm lucky enough that like I get enough artistic satisfaction from my job on a certain level. I'm kind of happy with what I did, so it's like I don't feel the need like I have to do some other artwork because I feel like the work I'm doing is so lame.
Well, but you create digital art at work. Do you miss like traditional painting? It's kind of different, right?
Yeah, it is different, and I still will do like a little bit of painting. I haven't done anything like recently, but I definitely it's on my mind. I have paint set up. I have like stuff ready to go. I actually went painting with like Q like last week or two ago. But I ended up just painting on my phone because I was late in the day. So I was like, I'll just like use my phone, do a quick little sketch. So I think just sketching outside. So even if you sketch on your phone, like that's kind of fun. You're just trying to capture the light, basically.
Right, right. So you wouldn't try to stay at home and paint based on a photo?
I don't really do that. I've tried to do it a long time ago, but I always feel like I do a bad job, and so it's just like there's so much that you see when you're outside that you don't see from a photo. So it's kind of tough. And people pay for photos; they do a really good job. But I feel like for me, it's like it's tougher and it's not as interesting. I feel like painting outdoors kind of spoiled me. So like even doing like a still life, it's like, well, or I could go outside where it looks a lot cooler than this. What I've done is maybe I'll sketch digitally or I'll paint and I'll take a photo and then I might touch up inside based off of what I did. But I did a lot of work outside and then I'll use the photo to kind of like further the image.
Yeah, and that's what I heard from like other people too. They refuse to participate in the Plein-air Pro this year because we recommend them to use photo references, and they were like, if we want to do Plein-air, we just want to go out, but because of the quarantine, we can, so we don't want to do it this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I think sketching photos is not bad. Like there's definitely some useful stuff with doing like a digital like plain air or whatever. So I would not totally poo poo it, but it's like yeah, just there's a different feeling.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the key things. How does plein air painting help you with your art job?
Well, it definitely helps a lot because I do background painting and we use, a sense of light. So you're portraying a sense of light, but I kind of have to mine from my own personal experience from light and color. And so that helps a lot to like inform me. So when I get a layout, like a line drawing, I have an idea like, oh, the light will kind of be this way and the colors will be that way based on my experience from painting. It's a tremendous help. And I think that's probably why I got the jobs I got is because of like the sense of light and color that I have from traditional painting. Even when I'm at my job, I'll get like an assignment, I'll get like a layout. I'm like, oh man, if I could spend like a day in a similar location and do a bunch of studies from life, I could probably do like a way better painting than what I did.
So you wish you could do plein air for your day job.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know for like, you watch all those making of or whatever for like the feature stuff, or like I know like Prince of Egypt, like, oh, they went to like Death Valley and did like studies from life to get the lighting. It's like, I, like that definitely helps inform you a lot and gives you a lot of ideas for like color and lighting too, because you don't realize how interesting nature is and how colorful it is. Like if you go in the desert, like, oh, a desert, it's like yellow sand and a cactus and a rock. But if you go to Arizona and you go to the desert, it's actually pretty colorful. And actually there's like some bright greens for like the cactus and other um, similar kind of plants. And so like, or the way the sun sets or like the light goes across the land, it's actually, it's hard to outdo nature. I find as like people are, like you get a lot and you keep that in your head for later on, and then you can apply it to your work, and it has a sense of reality to it that people instinctively recognize. They're not everyone's like an artist. They don't know why something is cool, but they instinctively recognize something. There's a reality to it. Like even on like Kipo, where colors were like a little bit weird, and so they weren't like 100% supposed to be 100% realistic. we still kind of use like the idea of like realistic lighting. It's weird trying to apply certain characteristics of realistic lighting, but like not making something that's totally real. I don't know. I feel like it helps a lot with whatever you do for like color and painting. Simply relying on like internet searches is not. It's like it'll get you a lot of information, but when you have to research for your work, you start to realize how much is not online. Like
Yeah.
especially some like weird view of something or weird lighting. It's like not everything's there. Sometimes you have to take your own lighting reference. I've told my students like make a little fake model or a 3D model and use like the lighting on there to figure out the lighting, because you might be surprised what happens. It might not happen the way you think it will.
Speaking of your students, what do you teach right now?
I teach digital painting for CGMA. Sort of beginner. I mean, it's not 100% beginner, but like kind of early on painting and strictly talking about painting. And so I talk about it in terms of like traditional painting too.
What kind of subjects do you make them paint?
That's really like, so we start out really simple, do film studies or like do like a texture, like object, something like that. And then, okay, like we'll take a line drawing and let's try to do like a painting of that and try to like have it be a little finished and feel dimensional, have a sense of light, sort of combining it all. It's kind of tough because like it's a short amount of time. And I think one thing for taking classes is people have a high expectation of what they will learn in like one class. It takes a long time. Like it may take like 3 classes of the same class to actually learn to actually grow. There's a lot of practice, and it takes time to develop your skill.
Do you recommend them to plein-air painting for your students?
Oh yeah, I definitely tell them. I encourage them to do a lot of studies whenever they can, and even take a class because it'll help a lot. I think for me, a dream class would be, okay, you have an illustration. Here's a concept. Here's like the drawing. Now go to some actual place and do some studies from life for like lighting and color, and that's going to make your imaginative like art a lot better. Your concept art a lot better.
Would you consider teaching plein-air painting?
Yeah, I would think it would be fun. It's hard to teach plein air painting, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited about plein air painting, so I think it would be a fun class to do. And I have some ideas about like how to break it down. I think sometimes people make it too complicated, and so you really have to keep it simple. Like really try to simplify it early on for people, so they're not overwhelmed.
I think you should totally do that. You're super good, and you miss traditional painting. I think it'll be a great opportunity if you teach a plein-air class.
Oh,
So,
thanks. Yeah, that would be fun. I think there are some people that they teach because it forces them to paint too, because they otherwise wouldn't do that. I think a couple people have taught just for that reason.
yeah, and also you can start with workshops. Maybe you don't have to
Yeah,
teach a lot of people for a long time, right? Yeah, start
yeah,
small.
yeah.
Maybe we can do a warrior painters like a workshop with you first.
Yeah. I have to have like a test group, to like really work out my teaching kinks.
Yeah, we have a big group for you to use.
Yeah, that's the one thing with teaching is like you don't really know what you're doing, and so actually you have to you do it, but you get better. You become a better teacher by just doing it for a while, and then you kind of figure out things to do to try to make the process better for them. So it's a learning process for the teacher to teach.
Yeah. I know you've had a lot of great teachers. Do you have any new recent favorites, like plein-air artists, idols?
There's there's a lot of people I follow, but I guess looking at that question, so I have the 2 people that pop on my head that I'm probably the most excited about constantly about like the work that they do is David Dibble and James Gurney. I'm constantly excited and entertained by like the work they do. I actually have a David Dibble painting I bought, like a little one. And yeah,
Just
it's
follow
just
the warrior painters, and I was really excited.
oh yeah, no, he's great. He's very nice too. We emailed each other, and he's in Utah, so I actually visited Utah the first time last summer. And I was like, oh, these are all David Dibble paintings. Like I recognize the landscape. I was like, oh, I could see like where he paints at. And James Gurney, I mean, he does really nice paintings, but he also talks a lot about the painting process. So Yeah, he has a great blog to follow.
Yeah. So if we go back to specifically plein air painting, what kind of tips would you offer to people who want to start off? Besides taking classes, I guess.
I think keeping it simple, like I know in the previous episodes, they've recommended like a limited palette, and I definitely do think a limited palette can help a lot. Because like sometimes you have like so many colors, and then you're just mixing, and you're spending more time mixing than actually painting, and painting a lot. I think having like the really strong work ethic is like the biggest thing. Do studies, go outside, like really look at lighting. And I think also being taught how to look at lighting is really important, because sometimes like you don't know what you don't know. And so that's what I learned. Like, well, I worked on Transformers, and my boss was Christophe Vache, and he taught me a lot of things about color, about like broken color and value shifting, and to make it more interesting. And I just didn't know it. I couldn't see it until he pointed it out to me. So having someone point this thing out to you, so even though you see what they see, like you're not able to interpret it.
So what you're saying is find a good mentor. That's important. And hardworking,
Yeah,
good work ethics.
definitely. I mean, I think taking classes, there are definitely some self-taught artists. I mean, I think like James Gurney is relatively self-taught for his painting, but I mean, I know he looked at old masters. So it's not impossible, but I think having classes or good mentors like really helpful. And like even like I was on the job, so having a job where a boss is like generous enough to like lend their time, that's like super helpful. So putting in the time too, like really putting in the time and putting in the work. And there's like putting in actual time versus just like I'm simply standing here and like making some marks, like being focused, giving an honest effort with your time, and being patient too with your progress. Like even when I was in school, I felt like nothing was happening. I was like working super hard, and I felt like my skill was going nowhere. But if you looked at like within the year, there was a difference. But like it's so slow that it's kind of hard for you to notice. And so it's very frustrating. That's like the biggest thing, is like people get really frustrated, and it is frustrating. And painting is hard. I think people think like, oh, one day I'll be so amazing and I'll just be able to do like a super awesome painting every time. And the reality is that I've experienced is like you may get better, but like you're kind of always frustrated. You're kind of always like unhappy. Like most of my work, I'm like, oh, it could be better. I'm always like trying to like make it better. So you get better, but then you also see how you could be better. Yeah, you see the faults even though you make progress. So yeah, just keep going and not giving up easily is like a really big thing too.
Yeah, what about a painting medium? I know you started in oil, and later on you tried other stuff, but other people I talked to, they all recommend gouache. So I want to see like what's your opinion on the painting medium?
So the mediums, they all have advantages and disadvantages. So even though I don't paint with oil now, like I'm really happy I did oil, because gouache is like very easy to deal with and an easy cleanup, but it's hard in the way that like if you mix oil like and it dries, the value and the color doesn't shift at all. It stays the same. So it's way easier to make a very sophisticated value painting and color painting, because like you're not guessing like how much is going to dry. But then it's like very slow going and clean your brushes and all that stuff. I took a lecture with Nathan Fowkes, and the one thing that stuck in my head is always says, try to make art as convenient as possible so that you can kind of crank it out. So I think gouache is good, but I think oil is good as well, even acrylics. But even digital, even sketching on your phone, if I'm out somewhere, I can just pull it out and do a little sketch. That's enabled me to capture some things I would never have been able to capture because I don't have my gouache with me all the time. Although like Nathan Fowkes has a little fanny pack that he does have that. But yeah, I recommend like all the mediums.
I didn't know Nathan Fox carry a gouache set like people carry a cell phone. like,
Oh yeah. No, he's talked about it. He has this like little tiny fanny pack, like you can find on his website, and like it's like this little tiny thing, so he could just do a little painting whenever he wants, anytime.
Yeah, no wonder younger people choose to just digital paint. Happy paint.
Yeah.
Shout
Oh yeah,
out.
heavy paint's good. I've seen amazing stuff done with that program. I will say, even though I say digital is like a really good medium, it's very useful. I'm the most proud of like my traditional paintings. I feel like the most happy about a really good traditional painting. It's like a physical thing you can hold in your hand, and it's like harder to do. And so I'll pull out my old paintings that I like. I'm like, oh yeah, it's still cool. I will say that there is a much higher sense of satisfaction from painting if you with traditional versus digital.
Okay. How do you keep yourself motivated as an artist?
The biggest motivation for me is when I see really cool art. And I think it's a compliment to the artist. So I see a painting or I go to like an exhibition or a digital painting and I'm like, wow, like that's so cool. I want to do a painting that's like as cool as that. And maybe just forcing yourself to do it. Like you just have a schedule, even though I don't have a schedule. But if you had a schedule, you keep it more regular. So like one great thing on Kipo is like Angela kind of got us together to do like a painting lunch group. We painted like very regularly. So even though I didn't always feel like painting, we just did it. And I did like, a sketchbook filled with little paintings, little studies. That was great. So I guess having people that are really motivated for painting too is encouraging and kind of gets you off your butt to like do some painting work.
Thank you so much. You offered so many great tips.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. We love hearing from you. Feel free to write us a review on Apple Podcast or other platforms, leave us a comment on YouTube, or just message us on Instagram. If you want to support us, please consider donating on Gumroad. You'll find a link in the description. All right, see you again soon.